Waiting on the line is Paul Lonsdale. He's confirmed that he's running as independent candidate for Halswell. Good evening to you, Paul.
Good evening, Nicholas.
Good evening. It's been a while since you were a councillor. In fact, how long has it been?
Well, it's 3 years, which is the term that they run in. So 3 years since I was last in office.
When you've run for election, as you did because there was a change of territories back in 2016, when you're not re-elected, how does it feel?
Well, I suppose it would depend on how much you did in your term. Now, I personally felt I did quite a bit of my term, and I have to say I was pretty disappointed. And but it's those things that it's politics. There's lots of things involved, and you can't really take it too personally. You have to sort of just take it on the chin and move on.
I've talked to quite a few candidates so far, and I'm just wondering how important is fit so that you have, you're going to get a divergence of opinion around the council table, but basically you've got to be able to get on with the job of running the city. How important is how you fit into the other people along that have been elected?
Look, it's all part of it. So if you don't get on with other councillors and you don't get on with the rest of the team there, you'll find it difficult to get anything that you'd like for your own ward that you represent. Difficult to get across the line. So you've got to have the support. They've got to respect you, and I think that's highly important. And obviously, from a city's point of view, it's equally as good to have a divergent of opinions around the table. When you get a sort of collective that actually has a similar position in many things, then you don't get a diversity of thought, and you don't get generally a good outcome because there's no pressure to find middle ground. So I think we may have seen some of that in this last term.
Let's have a look now at what you've been doing actually since 2016. You were employed by the Business Association in New Brighton to look at regeneration in that area.
Yeah, look, I was brought in to help out with regeneration. Obviously, I'd had some considerable successes in that area. New Brighton was struggling to get off the ground and was struggling to be heard, and I think it still does suffer to that degree. But we've got some stuff over the line over the last 3 years. So we reduced all the vacancy rates. When I got in there, we were at about a 24 to 30% vacancy rate. We pretty much managed to build enough pressure in the market to reduce that down to almost zero. And that's, people might look at empty buildings, are buildings that can't actually be occupied, so they're not actually, determined as a vacancy. We advocated for the hot pools. We advocated for additional money to put on budget for some roading improvements that is on the budget. We advocated for the playground, the seaside playground that is now built. So we had some considerable successes, but obviously, it all comes down to funding, and it was a short-term contract, which did get extended a year, but the money ran out.
So you moved from New Brighton into the central city then?
Correct, yes. So I now run the Central City Business Association. It's back to a job that I've done before. So we set up the Business Association back in 2007. I was the first employee of the association, and we built it up to where it is today. And we've advocated quite strongly for, regeneration. We did some considerable effort post the earthquake, heavily involved. I was personally heavily involved in the establishment and the successes of Restart, the container mall.
I have to ask you, because this is a very important subject for the Central City business people. Do you think they've overdone it a bit with the cycle lanes and the lack of on-street parking?
Look, parking is a major issue for any commercial area, and it's important that it gets done right. So one of the things I did as a councillor, because we saw this move to radically reduce on-street parking coming in pre-earthquake with the action plan that the council of the day had in play. Obviously, the action plan got turned into the Accessible City Plan, which was mandated and put in place by the government. So a lot of that was actually, there's not much they could do about it. So as a councillor, I made sure that some key off-street parking facilities were put in place. So I saw that as an important move because of what was coming. Now, when you talk about the changes to the roading, a lot of people are very upset about it, concerned about the cycle lanes. They see other pressures that's on the council, whether it be, the burden of rates on the ratepayer. You even see that just recently the social housing, they can't afford to insulate their social houses. And is a cycleway the most important thing right at the moment? My view, we should have, if we were going to be doing cycle lanes, they should have been done at the time they were doing the skirt works, which is, the like-for-like replacement of and reconstruction of the roads. That would have reduced some of the costs, although some of those cycle lanes are actually funded by the government through the...
Okay, let's not get too bogged down in the cycle lanes, but I thought that I really should ask you about that.
Yeah, look, as I said, they are a concern for a lot of people.
Now, the ward that you're going to, Halswell, do you live there?
Yes.
Or what's the story
yes.
there?
Well, what story did you want to know? I mean...
Well, yeah, but you didn't stand for Halswell in the past. You were over...
No, that's true.
Hagley Ferrymead Way. So what's different this time?
Okay, so look, we moved out of this area for our children's schooling, and obviously the earthquake happened, and I got bogged down with insurance issues. We got our insurance issues resolved last year, and that gave me the ability to move back to the area which I'd spent most of my adult life in. So south of Christchurch, I've always been on the side of town, and I got quite locked, which is unfortunate for many people in Christchurch, as they know.
Will you be standing against an incumbent, or are they moving on?
No, there is an incumbent here, and I will be standing against them.
Who is that?
Anne Galloway.
Oh, okay. Is it fair to ask you how you think she's done as a councillor?
Look, it's probably not...
Well, I'm going to, so...
Yeah, look, fair enough. Look, part of the reason is that I think we could do better. Anne's a nice person. I think that she hasn't been the strong voice around the table, and that's not just me. I've heard that from a number of people. And, of course, she's part of that political grouping, People's Choice. And often the People's Choice, they will negotiate what's the best thing they're going to vote on, and they vote together in a block-type vote. And often that doesn't have the best outcome for some of the communities that they serve.
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, you are non-aligned. You're independent. Has that always been the case?
Yes, that's always been the case. Look, I don't mind people having their own political views, and I have my own political views, but I do not think that politics has a place at the council table. I think that we can't be under the thumb of Wellington politics. I think that's first and foremost. We serve the people of Christchurch at a local level, non-political level, and bringing politics to the table often ends up with a result that actually is not the best for the community that we serve.
Are there there must be some issues for Halswell ward that you're going to campaign on, so what are they?
Look, rates burden is a concern for all of Christchurch, but obviously water is another issue. We've got actually management of water in Halswell, so flooding issues. We've got to ensure we get on top of that, especially with the rate of growth that's happening out here, and controlling that growth, making sure that Halswell stays a great place to live in now, but actually also in the future. And obviously, when you build on land, that pushes water off because you've got all these harder surfaces, and it does actually increase the risk of flooding.
Now,
and obviously,
my producer's just pulling up some pictures of Halswell flooding. I had no idea it was such a problem there.
Look, that's because most people got to hear about the Flockton, they got to hear about the Heathcote areas that were badly flooded, but there are other parts of the city that needed to be strongly advocated for those issues, and that's again, another reason why you need a strong voice around the table, ensure that your message is getting through, and that it is brought to the front of minds of the other councillors to see that those issues are there and they need to be addressed.
Now, I live in the Flockton Basin, and it used to get pretty bad here. I can tell
sure,
you.
I know.
I was even living here during the really big earthquakes as well. But since they've done the remedial work, is it Dudley Creek?
Yes,
it took a
Dudley
very long
Creek.
time, and it was very expensive.
Yes,
And,
very expensive.
but it's worked. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have floods here again, but over the last, couple of years, my garage has only flooded twice, and over the last year, it hasn't flooded at all.
Look, we did this. I was on council when we put that plan together, and we were fully aware of what the remedial works would do for the people that live there. And obviously, when we first took office, you remember back in 2014, within 6 months, we had 3 major floods in Christchurch, and so that became, aside from the earthquake issues, it became top of mind. And we did, put some considerable money towards making sure that our communities could actually live in their homes and not fear every time it rained.
I'm speaking with Paul Lonsdale. He's the independent candidate for Halswell in the forthcoming local elections. 2 terms Leanne Dalziel has served now. How's she done?
Look, I think the first term we had some good growth, and we did a lot of stuff. We put a very solid long-term plan together, and that was quite difficult. Again, we had there was quite a divide amongst that, but we got a lot of stuff done. And what I've seen probably in this last term is probably more the cutting of ribbons on projects that were done in that term. This last term, I think we could have done better.
The Mayor made a comment that this term, the term that's now finished, she said, we're going to be getting back to basics, she said. Well, I would have thought that the basics were core council business all of the time.
There's parks, puddles and pipes, Nicholas. That's the 3 Ps, which is our core business. And quite honestly, the basics we should have been doing that anyway, because the earthquake damaged a lot of our basic role. And so back to basics, I'm not sure what that means. Personally, I think Christchurch needs to have some aspiration. I think the people of Christchurch would like to see really strong leadership and achieving some of those aspirations, and quick, decisive decision making is part of that. And I think we've seen more reports, delayed actions, and that hasn't really produced the results that I think that we would have liked to have seen in these last 3 years.
There's a feeling that we must have community engagement, and there must be consultation, and people's voices must be heard, but this all takes a long time.
Well, that is part of the Local Government Act. We have to actually adhere to that. But, if you talk to people out there, a lot of them say that, look, just get on with it. The consultation often they feel is piecemeal, because it doesn't really mean anything. If they took the real true pulse of the people out there on some of the issues they've actually agreed to do, take the cathedral, for example's sake. Now, I know it's a contentious issue, but I think there was a majority that didn't want the city to invest $10 million into the cathedral, but they went ahead anyway. So often people get, quite disheartened when they don't feel as though they're being heard, when there is quite a pulse taken of the city for major decisions. And that is also leadership. You've got to sometimes take the bold move. But I think we are still waiting for some of those anchor projects that should have been delivered. And take the multi-use arena or stadium. They call it multi-use arena because the stadium seems to have garnered some term that if people seems to upset people, but it is a stadium, a multi-purpose arena. There will be other things that happen in there. It should have been delivered in 2017. Now,
just 2 more questions for you, Paul, because we're nearly out of time now. If you're elected, will you still keep on the inner city business job, or do you have to resign?
Look, I think I resigned last time, and I think from a perspective of actually ensuring that you don't have conflicts of interest, you're best to remove yourself from those portfolios. Obviously, as a city councillor, you make decisions based for the whole city. We've got to have a thriving heart. Obviously, that's really important for the city ongoing. And so, as a councillor, I'm still cognizant of that. The success of Christchurch and the success of every suburb is dependent on actually having a good, healthy heart of our city.
And the last question, are you actually considering a late run for the Mayoralty?
Look, I haven't discounted that. I've made that quite clear that I am considering it. And the reason is that I think that there is certainly an opportunity. There is a mood for some change, and I'm taking that into consideration. Lastly, a good mayoral race gets people out of their seats and voting. And make no mistake, without a good, solid mayoral race, we will not get a strong voter turnout. And that is not going to be good for Christchurch, because you don't get the right councillors elected, because you haven't got enough people coming out and actually making their stand and letting their voice be heard. So all I do is encourage everybody, get out and vote.
Paul Lonsdale, standing at the moment as independent candidate for Halswell, perhaps for the Mayoralty. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on After Dark.
Thank you very much, Nicholas.
And a good night to you.
You too.